Mr. President, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, has been a target of your recent threats. While I can recognize your point of view, I would like to take a few moments to present a counter-argument to your recent rhetoric of possibly pulling out of the treaty. NATO was officially formed in April of 1949 as a countermeasure to the ever-growing threat of the Soviet Union after World War II. The dissipated European countries relied on us to help them recover from the war, since without a fast recovery, communism could spread throughout the continent. The Marshall Plan began 1 year before the formation of NATO, and it helped bolster the ties between member states. Our economy flourished by providing the proper tools for the economies of Europe to become revitalized and begin rebuilding. There is truth to the old adage, there is strength in numbers. Independently, we are not as strong of a threat as we are united, and division is exactly what our opponents would like to see. Mr. President, collective security was the name of the game when we chose to join this treaty, and it still is. Every member state is required to intervene in the case of an outside act of aggression. That's 29 countries all having each other's back. The budget problems you have raised are legitimate issues. We contribute just over half the combined GDP of member states, and a whopping 71% of the total defense fund. According to NATO guidelines, all members should aim for a total of 2% of their GDP to be spent on defense. Only 6 other countries have met this goal besides us, although the 2% is not a rule, just a suggestion. I don't think there is anything wrong with asking these countries to step up and contribute more. In fact, your 2 predecessors have held the same opinion, although they haven't gone to the extremes that you have in voicing them. A larger military budget can help these states become less dependent on us. If you look at this graph, you can see the huge difference in pay scale, with over 5% of our GDP being funneled into military spending. While a 3% difference may not seem like much, when you compare our GDPs, it's actually a chasm. The advantages of staying in the treaty are large, and arguably make up for our larger bill. For example, take Article 5 of the treaty, which requires a collective response to a member state being attacked. It has only ever been invoked once, when we were attacked on 9/11. The response was from our counterparts joining us in our war in Afghanistan, fighting and dying by our side. This is the main point of NATO, to offer a collective protection which is much more potent than any country individually. We also have strategically positioned bases around the world in our allies' countries, giving us a presence near areas of concern like North Korea and Russia. Many of these bases are subsidized by our allies, in whose countries they are based in. For example, Japan pays for at least 70% of the cost to build and maintain these military bases we position our troops in. We gain a strategic footing in the Pacific, and they gain shelter under our protective umbrella. The trade deals we have with these countries are the largest partnerships in the world, with almost $700 billion of trade with the EU alone. I know that you find many of these trade deals to be unfair. Leaving NATO would not only cancel these deals, but it would hurt any effort you might want to make in reforming them. The requirements of NATO membership are also something to consider when weighing the benefits of the treaty. To become a member of NATO, a country must meet certain political and social requirements, and democracy is one of those core requirements. As the beacon of democracy, we can use NATO to further spread our ideas throughout the world. A weakened NATO gives autocratic countries no incentive to adopt more liberties and freedoms for their countries. On the world stage, we need to appear united against our foes. By publicly renouncing the organization, we only push possible member countries away from the democracy and into the arms of our enemies. A prime example of this can be seen in the Ukraine. This country borders Russia, and its acceptance into NATO would be a boon in our efforts to provide security to an already war-torn area. By attacking the effectiveness of NATO, the Ukraine may feel more obligated to deal with Russia, instead of with us via the treaty. We need to back NATO, and your recent remarks on possibly pulling out do not help us further our interests. This treaty has many benefits, and a pullout like you have threatened to do cannot be taken lightly. When it comes to long-standing treaties, there needs to be a level of finesse involved when dealing with challenging the other members. I cannot stress how important this treaty is, not only for us but for the rest of the democratized world. There is a reason why our enemies are not part of the treaty. They would love nothing more than to see it fall apart. Perhaps a more diplomatic approach to raising your concerns is in order. Instead of threatening to pull out of the treaty like you did with the Paris Climate Accords, you could present a plan to bring all member countries to the 2% GDP military spending goal. As of now, many countries are on track to meet this goal. Lest we forget, this treaty was formed in an effort to prevent another world war, and without it we may find ourselves back on track to our third and most likely final war. Thank you for your time, Mr. President, and I hope that this briefing will help you evaluate the best course of action regarding NATO.